and hockey fans around the world. Welcome to Isles Talk. My name is Paul Kreischer. I'm your host this evening. And this is a part of the show this time of year where I always do a quick review of the prospects. It's after the World Junior Championships, it's the middle of the season. Um, it's nice to give Islander fans a quick glimpse, um, not only of the future, but there is a future, um, how things are in the development world. And sometimes it can give you a quick insight into the trade deadline, into the draft, moving forward. So, this show might actually answer some of those questions tonight. It may add more questions. So, thank you guys for coming on. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. And don't forget to find us on Facebook and on X. So, um, before we begin, I'm going to go real quick over the standings. And I know the games have been horrible, but in all honesty, I didn't want to do another show and complain about the stupid penalties again. Gary and I have been doing it since November, the beginning of November. Um, there's no sense of boring you. No sense of getting everyone upset again. There's no point of going over it. The Islanders have got to fix that at some point, whether it's the players, whether it's the coaching, whatever. We're done talking about that part. Um, Taking a step back, taking myself out as an Islanders fan and putting myself in an NHL fan um, perspective. The only movement right now have been the Islanders dropping in the rankings in terms of the percentages. The Carolina Hurricanes are still on pace for 101 points. Folks, I'm not going to lie. If the Carolina Hurricanes can't get up to like 105 or 107 on that point pace, I could see them coming down a little bit. The Philadelphia Flyers are doing everything magical this year. I don't even know what they're going to do. Um, and that's a good thing. Sometimes, as an NHL perspective, we just don't know what they're going to do. They're holding on. The Devils a few years ago, they were in there by game 60, and all of a sudden it just dropped. I don't know if that's going to happen with Philly, but kudos to Philly for keep doing what they're doing right now. The Devils, Penguins, and Capitals, all three teams right now are on pace for 94 points. Again, the Devils and the Penguins are on their way up, but for me, I really need to see the Penguins and Devils get up to maybe 97, maybe 98 in order for me to really take them seriously. I don't know if they can. I don't know if they can sustain it. The Capitals are slowly dropping in the standings, slowly coming down to earth. Um, for me, are the Capitals going to be buyers or sellers? That's going to be it for me. And with the Islanders right now, they're on pace for 89 points. The bad side to that is that this is the lowest point percentage that they've had all season long. If they hadn't messed up against Nashville, they're still on pace for 91 points. I would have been a little more comfortable with that. The bright side, there is one, is that it's probably going to take 95 to 100 points to get back into that playoff run, that playoff pace. And they do that? Yes. We'll find out how. Stop taking stupid penalties, and that will be the first one. And in all honesty, Semyon Varlamov's got to get back sooner than later. But we're going to leave that discussion for another time, probably next week. For me, it's going to be a run. Matt Barzal wanted to get into the playoffs a little earlier. That's probably not happening. Right now, I'm going to say fourth through seventh is up in the air, probably for the rest of the season, depending on the trade deadline. And I'm not going to lie, Canes and Philly, I think they may come down to earth, but we got to give them another few more weeks. So it's a long season. Hopefully, we can all stay in it, but we'll go from there. All right. So, Islander prospects. And I'm going to go real quick, a little bit of an education here. What's the difference between a retool and a rebuild? The Islanders have been retooling probably since 2019 when they drafted Simon Holmstrom in that first round. 2018, that was get as many prospects as possible. Um, but 2019, 2020, even 2021, I started to see a pattern where, yes, the first round picks were being traded for immediate help, but at the same time, uh, Lou was drafting players much younger, very early in their draft years, and allowing them to try to develop on their own, so on and so forth. Now, I want to say right now, this is not a promotion for Lou. This is not, um, this is not pro Lou. This is what it is. Um, a retool is drafting players who are younger, give them a little more time to develop, but you can trade your draft picks for players who can still compete and win now. The Islanders have done that with JG Pajot. They've done that with Kyle Palmieri. They've done it with Romanoff. They've done it with Horvat. As of right now, none of those picks have been bad. None of those trades have been bad. Um, for now. So that's a retool. It's trading your draft picks to win now, but drafting younger players to give them more time to develop and have them come around. You've seen that so far with Simon Holmes. A rebuild is selling practically every aspect player that you have in your organization and trading them for draft picks and hoping the draft produces you a team. And then as you develop the players, you start to keep the ones that you want. You sprinkle in a couple of free agents and you try to build a team that way. Um, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Doing a rebuild in this NHL is actually not a good idea anymore. And let me tell you why. If the NHL, and this is going to bother a lot of Islander fans, it's going to bother a lot of hockey fans. If the NHL was really worried about teams winning the Stanley Cup, we'd probably be down to anywhere between 26 and 28 teams. Period. The moment I want to say it was 93 or 94, where the NHL started to expand, especially down in Florida, and then we grew all the way up to 32 teams. Those chances of winning the Stanley Cup these days get smaller and smaller. And even from 20 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with we're, we have owners now who are billionaires, not multimillionaires, billionaires. They're worried about money. They know that getting to the playoffs, they're going to make some more money. And we're also dealing with younger players. Yeah, they kind of want to win now, but they don't want to go through the grind. We've seen professional sports. We made it to the playoffs. Great. We'll see what happens after we get into the playoffs. They're literally taking one day at a time. Literally, one day, one game at a time. So, if the Islanders were to go into a rebuild, you end up looking like the Ottawa Senators. 5 straight years of not even having a chance into the playoffs. You look like you're heading into Buffalo. Buffalo's not doing anything. When was the last time Buffalo did anything playoff wise? The New Jersey Devils right now, one time in 7 years. I don't, owners don't want to do that. Columbus Blue Jackets. Look at what San Jose has to do. Look what Anaheim is doing. Yes, some of these prospects are going to be good for them, but it's going to take too long. It may not even work. That's a problem. So I think the retool is a new rebuild, and I think Lou so far, from what I've seen so far in this prospect pool, I really I do like what he's done so far. Will it produce? That's going to be the issue. That's going to be the question. When I go over the draft and I go over every prospect the Islanders have at the end of the season, and I go over the draft, I've had a lot of misses, more misses than hits, no doubt. But I always go by the not the ceiling, the floor. I always go by the floor of the prospect, meaning what's the absolute lowest this player could be, and what chances does this player have of getting to that floor? Because the ceiling is usually unpredictable, but there are certain players on the radar. John Tavares, Steven Stamkos way back when, Victor Hedman. You knew where their ceiling was, and even to a certain degree, Noah Dobson. You know, you know where they were headed in terms of a ceiling. A lot of these players that the Islanders have now, they're more of a floor, but there's a good chance that these players are going to hit the bottom expectations for the Islanders, and that's really what I was hoping to see. So, moving on, is it a good idea to do a retool instead of a rebuild? Absolutely. For any kind of philosophical reason, retools are the way to go. It keeps the team competitive. It keeps the fans interested, to say the least. And rebuilds, they're never a guarantee anymore, and that's just due to the amount of teams in this league. And they want to expand it to 33, maybe even 34. Billionaire owners are not going to wait 7 years for your team to make the playoffs. It's not happening. So, without further ado, let's get into the Islanders prospects, and we're going to start off with Europe. And I'm not going to lie, most, if not all, of these players in Europe right now, if they were to play in any league not in Europe, it would be Worcester of the East Coast Hockey League, not even making it to Bridgeport, not even sniffing the American Hockey League. Why is that? Well, there's a decent crop of European players that were drafted in the fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds. Put zero expectations on any of those players. Okay. You might see at some point Alexander Lundkrantz come in and play in the American Hockey League. Maybe. Everyone else, I'm not even going to lie, it's not worth getting into big details with because they're still finishing up some of their junior seasons over in Europe. Some of them are playing professionally, but it's not a big impact. But again, you're dealing with lower rounds, your lower round draft picks. Am I expecting much? Nothing at all. The only European that I really am looking forward to seeing at some point is Kaliodelis. Um, Left defenseman, um, 6'1", 190. He's already got the great AHL size. Unfortunately, for the 19-year-old, and he just turned 19, 18 or 19. He's a youngin. He's been injured all season long. So I don't know if the Islanders are going to bring him over next season or they're going to give him another shot over in Europe. But he's been injured this entire year. So moving ahead into the future here, if it would be possible, the Islanders would probably do themselves really well if they drafted a couple of mid-round picks from Europe and then possibly, bring them over a la Simon Holmstrom. That wouldn't be a bad idea, especially with the crop of prospects that we still have. So that's it in a nutshell with Europe. There's not much there. Um, Certainly at this draft, and I know, uh, this draft is going to be decent. Drafting a couple of Europeans probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Let's move on now to Europe. Ah, yeah, we always start. Okay, so oh yeah, let's do the Canadian Hockey League. Let's do that. Now, speaking of Canada, good segue. Good segue. Listen, Canadian Hockey League. Also, little bear, a little bear. We have Justin Gill out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, overager, playing center, doing very well, lining it up in the queue. He's in that mold of Matthew Maggio and William DeFore. What's he going to bring to us in the AHL? We don't have a clue yet. He's doing well for right now. And listen, I have him projected as an American Hockey League player. I think he's in Bridgeport next season. In terms of a floor, I think Gill could be an NHL 3C. Could be. Maybe a winger. I'm not expecting much out of him. But again, could he hit that floor? Depending on his two-way game, he could be a 3C. He's going to need a few years, like DeFore, like Maggio. When they all get that taste of professional hockey, it's a different level. But I see Justin Gill as a call-up, absolutely. But I think that would probably be it. But a 3C, maybe 4C, but there's going to be a bunch of other players that's going to be in Justin Gill's way. He's got a long way to go. The other big one, Isaiah George. Okay, I know people have been singing some kind of praises about Isaiah George. And if it's one lesson I have learned when it comes to drafting and scouting and following players, never overhype your own players. I may do that with one tonight, but Isaiah George is not that player. Listen, doing very well with London. London is in the top 10 in the CHL right now. For me, as a floor, I see Isaiah George eventually replacing Mike Riley. He would replace Mike Riley in a heartbeat when he's ready. I think he's a third line left defenseman. I think you're going to see him in a role like Mike Riley. I think the Islanders will absolutely need him. And as long as he continues to develop and grow his game, I think he'll be the eventual Mike Riley replacement. That's me on Isaiah George. Could he be a top four? Maybe. But I don't want to put that ceiling that high. I don't. Right now, he's a top four on a very good team. Let me see him play defense on a really bad team. Let me see Isaiah George play in the Memorial Cup playoffs, the whole thing. Let me see him under pressure situations. Then I'll give a better analysis of his stuff. Did he show up in camp really, really good? Absolutely. Really, really good. No doubt. Um, he had an excellent camp, but to be honest with you, it means nothing. Did he follow his conditioning training like he was supposed to over the summer? Absolutely. That was the whole point. Okay. Um, is he in Bridgeport next season? Absolutely. So there's a little bit of time with Isaiah George. I think he's going to be excellent for the Islanders. I think he's going to fit the system. My hope is that he can be a little bit better defensively than Mike Riley. That's my hope. If he can be better defensively and still put up the same kind of numbers as Mike Riley is right now, that's a steal for the Islanders. I'll take that. But that's the Canadian Hockey League, guys. There's not much. There's not much coming out of Europe. There's not much coming out of Canada at the moment. At the moment. Here is the Islanders' bread and butter, the college kids. Okay. Oh, some of these kids you're going to have to wait 2 years for. Some of them maybe just one. Scholes out of Wisconsin. You're looking at a steady floor right now, NHL third line defenseman, but he's your left defenseman version of a Scott Mayfield. He's a very good shutdown defenseman if you really need him to be. A lot of you don't like Scott Mayfield in the final 30 seconds of a game. I'm pretty sure you're going to like Schultz in the final 30 seconds of whatever game when he's finally playing. Again, just got started. He's a freshman. He's going to need a couple more years. And when you're in college, we all have this kind of simple rule. You really got to play 2 years in college. If you only play 1 year in college, it's kind of like a red flag for me and a bunch of others. So I expect him to be there 2, 3 years. But when he's ready, I him hitting a floor as of right now as a third pair lefty, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to hit that at least at the NHL. Quinn Finley. Let's talk about Quinn Finley. Listen, you want Zach Parise as a New York Islander on the third line. That's what you're getting out of Quinn Finley. He's in that mold. Quinn Finley, I think in 2 years, probably gets it to the American Hockey League. I think he'll be in Bridgeport in 2 or 3 years. If Wisconsin, I believe he's also going to Wisconsin as well. If Wisconsin's going for a national championship, I could see them both staying and going for a national championship as they should. Absolutely. 3C. I'm sorry. Third line left wing. Potential's there. Um, and again, a lot of these prospects, they're not going to wow you. They're not supposed to wow you. That's part of the retool. That's part of a retool. You draft those, you trade those first round picks for those star players now. But those bottom round players, you're getting a floor, an expectation from some of these players that, you know, the Islanders are pretty sure that they're going to hit. And those are what we call by safe picks. Quinn Finley's probably going to be one of those safe picks as long as everyone stays healthy, and the development continues to go where they are. Oh, one of my favorites, Cameron Berg. Cameron Berg right now. I know a lot of you were upset with Atu Ratu getting traded. Listen, I'm still high on Cameron Berg. Mike McMahon, kind of from College Hockey News last year, he said, "Look, Cameron Berg, probably in the American Hockey League at this point if he wanted to. He went back to the University of North Dakota, which is where he lives. He's going for a national championship. A 4C, 4C. That's what you're getting out of Cameron Berg. He can play the penalty kill. He's got a laser of a shot. He could be that next version of Casey Zizekas. I could definitely see that happening. Um, Danny Nelson. Danny Nelson, if you didn't see him in the World Juniors, um, he was also playing with Finley. Listen, Danny Nelson in the second round, I don't want to say it was a steal, but that was a solid pick. For me, Danny Nelson playing for Notre Dame currently. I have him on a floor at the NHL 3 as an NHL 3 center. He's a number 3. Could he be number 2? Could be. Could he be the eventual replacement for Brock Nelson? He could be. But is he a middle 6 centerman? That's a floor. It's just a floor. I don't really worry about ceilings until, we move on a little bit. They got to hit a certain age. Uh, for now, Nelson is still on pace for that. All right. I normally don't beef up prospects. It has bitten me in the butt so many times. But I got to tell you, boys and girls, I am excited for Alex Jeffries of Maryland. He's a left winger with a right handed shot, so he can play the left wing and the right wing. He has also played center, so he's a forward. And I put him in a mold of an updated version of Thomas Benn. who's got a much better two-way game than Thomas ever did or ever will. Okay. I'm cautiously optimistic when I say the word sniper because he can snipe the puck. Islander fans, you've been waiting for a sniper. You've been waiting for that type of goal scorer. He's not Ziggy. He's not bossy. He's not even Mario Sarkowski. He's got a snipe like Thomas Vanek had. And for you old time Islanders, the name Derek King comes to mind. Joe and I talked about that real quick. Joe will be on the show next week. He's got a shot like Derek King. He's got a shot like Thomas Vanek. He shoots the puck on the power play from that dot. He gets it there. Um, he does have a two-way game. And boys and girls, I'm not going to lie. If the Islanders can sign Alex Jeffries, because right now he's not signed, if the Islanders sign Alex Jeffries, and Alex Jeffries even has a decent season in the American Hockey League, I think Anders Lee is on notice. Just from a prospect level, Jeffrey's shot is that good that when worked with in the American Hockey League, you put him on a line with Horvat and you put him on a line with Barzell. Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right, Boyle. He had 40 goals one year. Alex Jeffries has that shot. I'm excited with Alex Jeffries. If you can put him with Bo Horvat and Matt Barzell, definitely. I'm excited to see what Alex Jeffries can do, at least in the American Hockey League. Now, the reason why he hasn't signed, and again, Mike McCormick and I had talked about this last year. The Islanders did offer him a contract, but he said no because he was going back to try to go for another. He was making another run for a national championship. A good portion of those players came back, like 16 or 17 out of like the 22 players. Um, all came back for one more run. And they just beat UMass over the weekend. I think they did a one-on-one series. They've got Boston College coming up. you know, Jeffries is scoring against some of the top teams in the nation. And Merrimack is a top 25 team, I think, top 30, somewhere in there. Jeffries was also out for a little while, also injured. So his numbers are a little skewed, but he's putting up points along with Matt Capone over there. Alex Jeffries, let's put it to you this way. Anders Lee, if he were to have a 15 goal season in his last year, I have no problem putting Alex Jeffries in. If Anders Lee gets injured during the second half of next season, I have no problem. I would be giddy with Alex Jeffries playing on the top line next season. Give the kid about 30 to 40 games. Give him the Travis Hamonic treatment. Let him get used to the pro game real quick. But then I'd have no problem with Alex Jeffries. I think he has the speed to do it. I think that would be the only thing holding back Alex Jeffries would be the pace and the speed of the game. Now, am I going to say Alex Jeffries is going to nail 40 goals in the first season? No. Do I think he's going to nail 20? Maybe not. I have Alex Jeffries as an NHL second line winner. I think that'll be his floor. I like the kid. I like everything he's done so far. If he can put it all together, you're looking at Anders Lee's replacement in another year or two. And I never praise prospects like this. But for me, Alex Jeffries, when I tell you this kid can snipe, this kid can snipe. He's got it. I very difficult for me to say that and just put him out there. The Islanders absolutely need to sign him. Hopefully soon, like yesterday. Um, so yeah, that's it on the college kids. Look, they've got some NHL potential. I think they're all going to make the American Hockey League. It's what do they do at the American Hockey League? If they can stay healthy, if their development continues, they're playing in great colleges right now. Almost all of them. I think all of them are in the top 20, top 25 in the nation. So their development is going strong. If they can do really well in the American League in the next year or two, minimum call ups. Minimum. Um, but again, their floor is kind of low. They're kind of low. And I do that on purpose because you just don't know what's going to happen with a lot of these prospects. But I think they all have a role on the Islanders at some point because it's got to go at some point, right? So, all right, moving on. Let's get into the prospects in the American Hockey League. I know the big one is uh, Ruslan Ishakov. Listen, big problem here for Ishakov, especially after this summer. On the left wing side, you got Anders Lee. Then you have Pierre involved. You got Simon Holmstrom and Matt Martin. Next year, you probably have Hudson Fashing on that fourth line. There's no room for Ishakov. There isn't. Um, the good part with the Ishakov's game, he is still the Matt Barzell of the American Hockey, and that's a double-edged sword. He's putting up points on a bad team, but at the same time, the book is still out on Ishakov. What I'm worried about is that when he gets to the NHL level and he tries to do the same, honestly, it's the same thing that Barzell does. He gets to the blue line, he tries to make a play, he tries to go one on one, one on two, one on three, one on four. I've seen it all season long. And my concern with Ishakov is that if he gets caught with the puck and an NHL defenseman knocks him to the ground, you're looking at a possible Brett Lindros situation where this is going to be another concussion for this player. 5'8", 170, boys and girls. 5'8", 170. Maybe he's gaining some more weight or muscle. Maybe. He'll destroy the KHL. He would absolutely destroy the KHL. I have no doubt of that. I think he has that potential. He has been successful in every league there is that he's been in. My concern is that there's going to be that one defenseman that's just going to take him out. It is. That worries me. I don't. It's not a talent thing, but the book is out on the shotgun. You can get him at the blue line, and it's over. He's a turnover machine in the American League, just like Barzell is in the National. But there's no denying he's got talent. Now, having said that, with a shotgun, if the Islanders were to re-sign him, does he clear waivers? I don't think so. I don't think he clears waivers. As we said before, teams like San Jose, Anaheim, Columbus, maybe even Philly, one of those teams may actually take a flyer on him, claim him off waivers. If Ishakov really does not have a future with the Islanders, trading him at the trade deadline or at the draft for another young prospect, preferably a center, preferably a goalie, could be in the works. Maybe someone who's playing the American Hockey League now. who also just needs a place to play. Restocked some of that prospect pool that the Islanders, granted, are missing in terms of numbers. You can also add up the quality as well. Um, could you put Ishakov in a trade package? Probably. For what? I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't even asked around. I haven't even asked around yet, and I'll get into that. Why I haven't asked around in any of the trade conversations or anything else like that. Does Ishakov have value? Absolutely. He's tearing it up in the American Hockey League, which is what I've been wanting him to do this year. I'm ecstatic for him. Does he deserve a shot in the NHL? He's earned it, but his play still has me nervous. Still has me nervous because I'll tell you right now, the top teams in the American Hockey League, they already know how to guard him. They already know how to defend him. That's the problem. Yes, he's still tearing it up, but for me, that size, it's going to be that one defensive play that could take him out, and I think that's what other scouts are worried about. Trade piece, maybe. Could he be a 13th forward next season? He could be. He could be. If he works on his two-way game a little bit better, I could see him as a middle six. Maybe the Isles turn him into a 13th forward. He's earned it. If he wants regular time, maybe a trade's in order. We'll see what happens. But from a development standpoint, maybe trade him away for a center. Maybe trade him away for a goalie. If you want, you can keep him as a 13th forward. Everyone else is going to be moving. We'll get into that later. Um, let's get into real quick. Reese Newkirk. I think he's going to be an AHL centerman. I think he'll be decent. I think he may take that Parker Wotherspoon route where he'll just resign with Bridgeport over and over again, maybe get 12 games as an Islander later on, and then he'll just be a free agent after that. He's 22 years old. I think he's 22 or 23. He still has to develop in Bridgeport. He could be a late bloomer for all we know. He's put up really decent numbers in Worcester. Just needed some time to play now in Bridgeport. I think he's going to get it. He can certainly pass the puck, so I wouldn't be upset with someone like Newkirk playing with Jeffries and Dufour next season, or even Newkirk with Maggio next season. I wouldn't be upset with that either. But again, Newkirk, we'll see what happens. Itu Liukas, for me, he's the eventual Matt Martin replacement. This is his first year in North America. Forget Bridgeport, forget the American Hockey League. It's his first time in the States. He's doing okay. Um, he's going to need at least another year, maybe two, for things to finally come in and fall into place for him. But Liukas, for me, fourth line left winger. I'll say right now, probably Hudson Fashion's eventual replacement. Um, Matthew Maggio. Again, welcome to the American Hockey League. He's done a little bit of struggling, a little bit of injuries as well. But you know what? For me, if the Islanders can properly groom him, you could see Matthew Maggio being that Julian Gauthier forward. He can play a bottom six role. He's got the speed. He's got the penalty kill if he could. He's got the two-way game. He's got the scoring. If he can add on a little more size, look, I like him as a Julian Gauthier replacement. I think that would be a perfect mold for Maggio. Um, but he's going to need time as well. He's in that mold of Dufour and Justin Gill, big time scorers and juniors. Welcome to the American Hockey. Let them get adjusted. Again, there's no pressure on Maggio at all this year. This is just experience the pro level. That's it. William DeFore. Boy, this one's going to be interesting. I know I said Alex Jeffries was my favorite. William DeFore is still there. Um, Hampered with some injuries and I believe some personal issues, which I don't delve into. I'm not even worried about it. None of my business. Um, Again, Bridgeport doesn't have the offense like it did last year, and I think this is going to be a great test for DeFore. I want to see him carry this team for the rest of the season as long as he's healthy. His speed has improved. His work without the puck has improved. He's starting to score now. He's getting into that game shape. Um, Thank you, Brush. I wasn't sure, and I wasn't going to get too personal with that, but I figured it was a family issue. But yeah, that's what I figure. I normally don't like to bring stuff up like that during the show, but yeah, it was a family thing. He's back now. He's doing really well. Listen, next season, depending on how well his offseason is this year, could you see William DeFore as a call up? Yeah, yeah. I'm almost comfortable with that this time around. I wasn't comfortable last time. I don't know why it even happened, but William DeFore next season, I think he could be a legit call up, depending on the injuries. Um, I still think he could be a middle six winger, quite possibly a second line winger with whoever is there. Um, Again, putting up great numbers, but I want to see a little more cohesiveness in Bridgeport next season. This year it's a little out of whack. We'll get into Bridgeport later on during the season, at the end of the season. And that's it for Bridgeport. A couple of players showing signs. Could they make it to the NHL? Maybe. I'll say right now, I'm going to go DeFore. DeFore probably has a future with the Islanders. Matthew Maggio, give him a little more time, but I think so. We'll see. But not in the role you guys thought. I don't think Maggio is going to be a top six goalie. Bottom six, but real good. He could be that Julian Gauthier. And the Shakov, no, I agree. I think the Shakov does have some NHL value. Is he going to be a 13th forward for the Islanders? Is he going to be part of a trade package? What does he want to do? That's going to be it. What does he really want? So we'll work on a Shakov a little later on. So listen, this last section of the Islanders, I've always had a difficult time, and I've had this discussion so many times with scouts, with coaches of the American Hockey League and whatnot. What makes a prospect? What age? Okay, what age? Um, a lot of them will say 22. After age 22, you're kind of like a prospect. Your time is over. I actually go to 23. And then after that, once you hit 24, you're pretty much done. And some agree, some disagree, but some understand where I'm going with it. So I'm going to change it up now, just a little bit. Not the ages so much, but I'm going to change up the terminology. If and the reason why I go 24, boys and girls, and this is something that we have all agreed on. Once you hit 24, the mind and the body usually come together as a hockey player. Case in point, look at Romanov and look at Noah Dobson. Okay. And I give Gary credit as well. We've all said Noah Dobson would have Norris Trophy. Um, what's the proper word? Not votes, but considerations. Okay. But he was hitting at 21, 22, 23. Now he just turned 24. Where is he at? Norris Trophy nominations. That's what we were striving for. Alexander Romanov, Seems to come together with him. Why? He's 24. He just turned 24. Okay. So what I've done is that I now have another section, another category for these next three players. These are potential NHLers. For me, they're still prospects, but these are the potentials. They're in the NHL, but we don't know where they are yet. Okay. My first one is Samuel Bolduc. No, I don't consider 24-year-olds prospects anymore. Yeah. If you turn 24 at any point in the season, you're not a prospect that season. So, like, for example, Noah Dobson was not a prospect this year because he turned 24 in January. Romanov was not a prospect because he turned 24 in January as well. Anyone who turns 24 earlier in the season, you're done. It's 23 or younger. Now, Samuel Bolduc is 23 years old, but he's playing 23 throughout this entire season. That's different. That's what Lou's been doing with this retool, drafting players a little younger. You got to give them that 23rd year. I still feel that Bolduc is on a good pace to be a second line left defenseman. Is he there yet? No. He's in the perfect spot right now where he is as a seventh defenseman. He's perfect. He's right where he should be. Better than playing in Bridgeport at this point. Didn't expect Bridgeport to be that bad. He's right where he needs to be as a seventh defenseman. He's 23 years old. You're only asking him to hit that next level of a third line left defenseman. And then as time goes on, maybe he reaches that fourth line defenseman. I'm sorry, that second pair defenseman. Did I say third line? Third pair. Just got to give him the time to do it. But you can use him in the situations like that. The Islanders have enough of a bridge in Bolduc where if they wanted to re-sign Mike Riley for one more year, they could do that. You could still have Samuel Bolduc as your seventh defenseman. Let him grow again. And then Bolduc, I think by the time that one year, I think Bolduc would be a third pair in 2 years. Solid, no problems. And I think he'd give you even more. Riley's not a prospect. No, Riley's not a prospect. No, no. Riley may have found a home with the Islanders at least for a year, but you're giving Samuel Bolduc a little more time to grow and evolve in the NHL. And from a prospect perspective, that's all you can ask for. That's fine. You don't have to call up any of the defensemen in Bridgeport when you have someone like Bolduc even next year. And you still have Grant Hutton next year as a right-handed defenseman if you really, really need to. Um, my other potential NHL player is Oliver Wahlstrom. Why is Oliver Wahlstrom still in this category? Because likes to draft younger players. Oliver Wahlstrom this season is also 23 years old throughout this entire season. Oliver Wahlstrom is patiently waiting for his time. When is that time? It might be next year. Cal Clutterbuck retires, possibly. Julien Gauthier can take over that line. And then you have a choice of either Kyle Palmieri or Oliver Wahlstrom. You can fit them in your middle six. Then Oliver Wahlstrom at 24 really, really needs to have a coming of age. He has to show that he wants to be an Islander for the long term. Has to. Has to. Is there really any pressure on Oliver Wahlstrom this year? No, there really shouldn't be. But in all honesty, I don't think Wallstrom's been given a big chance because Kyle Palmieri's been healthy. He's been healthy for the most part, and Julian Gauthier just seems to want it more, and that's a big thing. That's the big thing with Oliver Wallstrom. He's got to want it. He's got to want it, and he's got to make it happen at some point. He's got to show that he's more than just a puck shooter. That's the big one. And again, like Anders Lee with Alex Jeffries, Kyle Palmieri, if he finishes this season with only 15 goals, that's an open door for Oliver Wallstrom. There's enough potential in out of these kids where look, you're only asking Oliver Wallstrom to score 15 goals in the National Hockey League to replace Kyle Palmieri. He can do that. Does he have the rest of his game to keep the Islanders going? That's going to be the question. Yeah, no, I saw. Yeah, I saw that game. Yeah, Quinn Finley. You're going to like Quinn Finley, guys, no doubt. Now, my third and final potential, my prospect with potential here is 22-year-old Simon Holmstrom. Okay, again, I'm a little harder on prospects than most other people. I've learned this lesson. Yes, he's got 10 or 11 goals, right? Again, I think only 5 or 6 on 5 on 5. 5 or 6 on 5 on 5. Not really good enough if you're going to play the third line. You need a little more than that. But again, 22 years old. Does he have the potential to score 15 goals 5 on 5? Absolutely. Is he there yet? No. Does he have the time to improve on that? Absolutely. His offseason is crucial for him. I can see Simon Holmstrom taking a step. I don't want to say like Simon Holmstrom. I'm not like Noah Dobson, but maybe Alexander Romano, where everything just comes together, and he's not blowing up the NHL. But instead of maybe 5 goals this year, like right now, maybe in a year's time, maybe he's got 8, 9 goals, maybe a few more shorties, but his penalty killing is that much better. I think Simon Holmstrom's maturation is going to improve the penalty killing alone. And there's a part of me that's honestly wondering if the Islanders feel that Simon Holmstrom could be a second line left winger. I mean, Pierre Ball is about as streaky as it gets, and there's still a growth process here for Holmstrom. I, I'm I'm just curious if the Islanders feel that his ceiling could be on that number 2, and Enval moves down to number 3. I'm just curious. I don't know what the Islanders have in store for Simon Holmstrom. I'm curious. I think he fills the third line role beautiful right now, no doubt. But I'm wondering because there's a certain amount of time that Holmstrom still has. I'm wondering if they're gonna have him grow even further and become maybe a second line winger. That'll be interesting to see. But again, there's no pressure on Simon right now. There's none. So that's it. Those are your prospects. But this is what I wanted to bring in. This is why you're doing a retool and not a rebuild. Okay. Let's go down the list here. Cal Clutterbuck. Cal Clutterbuck could be replaced by Julian Gauthier next season. Oliver Wallstrom takes over Gauthier's spot, bare minimum, third line. At some point, Palmieri finishes up his career as either on the second line or third line, with Wallstrom taking over. All Mary's then done. So what do you do on that third line? Who's the other middle six? After that following season, you have William DeFord. Wouldn't that be something? Okay. So you're looking at a line of Barzell, Wallstrom, DeFore, and Gauthier, maybe in 2 years. Or next year. Yeah, in 2 years. Excuse me. On the left wing side, if something happens to Anders Lee, you're looking at Alex Jeffries. I'm excited for that. Or I will include him. I, I don't know if I want to include him on a first line. If Shakov has a shot, maybe. I don't know. I don't honestly. If I'm a betting man, I think Alex Jeffries has a better shot at replacing Anders Lee than a Shakov. I do. But again, Islanders have to sign him first. Pierre Enval and Simon Holmstrom could be swapping second and third line positions for the next 4 or 5 years. Who knows? And then Matt Martin's going to eventually be replaced by Hudson Fasching. And then you have Ituliukis, who again should be able to play those roles without an issue. At the center position, you still have Horvat. Brock Nelson, you can move down to a third line at some point. And then when Nelson is finally done, you can have Danny Nelson as a middle two in 2 or 3 years' time, minimum. Pajot and Cizikas, Cameron Berg. Is right there for the taking. Matt Barzell can go back to center. 13 starting players are over 33. Yeah, see, who's over 33? Great question. Yeah, I'll get into that in a minute. But here's the other one. Romanov, Dobson, they're here for a while. Okay. Adam Pellick could at some point be replaced by Samuel Bolduc, especially if Pellick is just continuing to be injured. The injuries to Adam Pellick, they're going to be telling. Could Samuel Bolduc develop into that and eventually replace Adam Pellick? Remains to be seen, but I'm a little more confident with that. Ryan Pulock, Scott Mayfield here for the next couple of seasons. And then you have, in my opinion, Calio Delius. He can play left and right defense. He would be your better defensive version of a Sebastian Aho. He would be a great seventh defenseman or a good sixth defenseman on the right hand side. I believe he can still play both. And then at some point, if Adam Pellick decides to retire, Isaiah George coming up in that left defense third pair happens. I don't want to say it's a seamless transition here, guys, but when you put the Islanders prospects in the spots that they really should play, it's not really much of a ceiling. It's more or less their floor, where they're supposed to be. These younger players have, we'll call it the potential, to replace these older veterans. They do. Koivula. Koivula is not a prospect. Koivula is an old goat. He's making $800,000 no matter what. Um, you know what? Again, I could see Anaheim taking a shot at him. Brent Thompson knows him. I don't think Koivula has the speed. I think that's the biggest thing that's been holding him back. Koivula also wasn't around this season, but again, what's he, 25? He's 25. He's no longer a prospect. He is basically who he is. Same thing with Robin Salo. Robin Salo's looking good lately. The problem is he's 25. Okay, maybe Salo becomes the next seventh defenseman. Who knows? Maybe Ishakov becomes the 13th forward. Robin Salo becomes that seventh defenseman. I doubt it. I mean, if they re-sign Mike Riley, I don't see Robin Salo here. Yeah, 26. We were close. Again, Robin Salo with the size bothers me a little bit. His playing style. And again, I'm worried with the Shakov and Salo. If they start playing in the NHL, one bad hit ruins them. Ruins them. You know, Shakov already has concussion issues, but again, he's 5'8", 170 ish, 180 soaking wet. You gotta be careful. Oh, speaking of goaltenders, yes. Sorry about that, boys. Tristan Lennox. Tristan Lennox is actually doing decent in Worcester. Um, I think at some point Tristan Lennox, if I had to put a floor on Tristan Lennox, not a ceiling, a floor, I think he's a number three goalie. I think he could be a starter for Bridgeport at some point. Yeah, he did. And he had a bad concussion when Ishakov was playing in UConn. Yeah, don't get me wrong, folks. He can play, and he's not Josh Hosang, where when he gets banged up, he looks at the ref looking for a penalty. When Ishakov gets knocked down, he gets back up. He's feisty like that. I'm worried with the NHL and the size and the way those defensemen hit, even those clean hits. That's going to do some damage as well. It's just the size. Christian is hurt. Okay. Yeah. A lot of injuries to these prospects. A lot of injuries to these prospects. But again, Ishakov is Matt Barzell in the American Hockey League. But they also have a playbook on him. Stop him at the blue line. That's it. You see the turnovers that Matt Barzell takes, or I should say makes. Ishakov does the same thing. Beautiful segue here, Ryan. I'm pretty optimistic generally, but I personally think our prospect pool is weak. To strengthen it, we may need to ship out some vets if we can get on a run here. Now, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that because this is the absolute bare minimum that these players have to do in a short amount of time. Because remember, next season, I believe the Islanders are going to have close to 6 million in cap space, give or take. Um, Moving forward, from a prospect view, do the Islanders have to trade their first round pick? No. They traded, I believe, their sixth for Robert Bertuzzo. Don't know if it was this year or next year. The Islanders, from a prospect standpoint, do not have to trade their first round pick this year. I think the retool is over. The development continues. And I think if the Islanders want to continue to exceed at this point, they need to draft over the next 3 years. Right, right. The Islanders have also been very good at, signing some of those college players, getting them ready now. Again, this year, taking a step back, take your emotions back a little bit here. I think the Islanders, if the Islanders finish, say, with 85 points, I think that would be the absolute bare minimum they would finish for the next couple of years. That would be the bare minimum because you have the older players playing. You've got the older players making some really dumb mistakes. If you're going to bring in these kids, you want to bring in these kids with less pressure. Okay. Meaning You don't want Alex Jeffries to replace Anders Lee when Anders Lee in his last season racked up 30 goals. You know what I mean? Exaggeration, but you get my point. Okay. If Anders Lee in his last season only racks up 12 to 15 goals and you're asking your rookie to do that, Alex Jeffries can do that. And in a sense, it's the same way with Paul Murray. If Paul Murray only racks up 15 goals, next season you're asking Oliver Wahlstrom to basically rack up 15 goals in the NHL. Oliver Wahlstrom can do that. The goaltending is a massive issue. Actually, Angie, Rush and I will respectfully disagree. There's been some injuries on this team, and I think they purposely went younger. They purposely went younger because they wanted to see these teams, these players play against the tougher teams. Like, welcome to the AHL. This is what you have to deal with. You want to be an Islander? Get there. Granted, some injuries, some inconsistencies, and they got younger. That's on purpose. And I think they did that because some of these college kids are ready to come and make that next jump next season. Moving forward, correct. I hate giving pressure credit. You all know I hate giving pressure credit. Can't stand it. But he's right. What I would like to see out of the draft, if the Islanders do hold on to their first round picks, draft a few more Europeans with talent, maybe bring them over like a Simon Holmstrom, and have them start playing with the Nelsons, the Bergs, the Finleys, the Jeffries, all within the span of 2 to 4 years. That would be phenomenal. Reverse that, Jim. You were close. Yeah. Andrew Hoff went to the KHL. Fritz is actually playing with Bridgeport. Chris Terry went to play with Chicago, who's they don't really have an NHL affiliate. So yeah, they did flip flop. They did flip flop. They wanted to get younger because they're about to bring in some of these prospects from college. But you know what? Believe it or not, the East Coast Hockey League, it basically reminds you of the junior hockeys in the playoffs. There is talent there. There is talent in the East Coast Hockey League. But again, there's a certain pace to it. You were to take some of those East Coast Hockey League teams, they'll compete with those, some of those teams in the playoffs in the Canadian Hockey League, and they'll do well. That's why I don't necessarily I take the regular season games with a grain of salt. The East Coast Hockey League, you still have professionals from the American Hockey League playing in the AHL that can whip up most of the playoffs. Most of they can whip up most of the CHL. That's where they're from. So, again, the players that Lou has now after the retool, they're all within a year or two. Okay, maybe three. But as I said before, they've got $6 million to play with this coming season, I believe. The year after that, they've got 30 $30 million. If I wanted to play the Lou loyalist, okay, I would probably swap Lee with Jeffries every once in a while. If Lee was injured, I would probably play Alex Jeffries. If I wanted to be a cutthroat general manager and Lee was struggling next season, you can buy out Anders Lee at $3.5 million for this season. I'm sorry, for next season and the season after. You play Alex Jeffries for less than what you were just paying Anders Lee. That's the purpose of the retool. That's what we're looking at here. Kyle Palmieri, if he's injured for the rest of the season, you could buy out his contract if you wanted to be cutthroat. You can still go Wallstrom, Gautier, and find another fourth line. You can do that. That's what I'm talking about here. Kyle McLean. I'm excited to see what Kyle McLean, even though he's not a prospect. Um, you know, I'm excited to see what he can do in place of Casey Zizekas. There's enough, barely, barely enough tools in this Islander prospect pool that can replace some of these aging veterans sooner than later. What I'm looking at from this draft is in preparation for the college players who are probably going to be in Bridgeport, say 2 years, 3 years max. If the Islanders start drafting some of these European players and they all come together within 2 or 3 years, Bridgeport's looking pretty hot. Bridgeport's looking pretty good there, boys and girls. And then the Islanders can continue their push. It's all a nice little setup. So if you're in the NHL, you're an NHL fan. If you're a Calgary fan, if you're a Chicago fan, you may want to start retooling now. So, that's it. That's the plan. Questions, comments, concerns. I usually enjoy doing this show. I can pretty much talk all night, about prospects and drafting and whatnot. Listen, the Islanders do have some tools. They're not a lot. Granted, quality's not there. Some quality, but it's being developed. Luckily for this year, most of them are not being developed in Bridgeport. I like Lee as a power forward. He's got the heart. I just wish he would transfer it to the young kids. He's the captain, so there's so much trouble in the room. I don't, you know what? I don't know if there's a problem in the room. There's a problem on the ice. And Gary and I have been talking about this. I'm at nausea about it. Stupid penalties. The Islanders have got to lead the league in stupid penalties. And not all of that can be on Lane Lambert. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem in the room. Stupid penalties. The Islanders have got to lead the league in it. And it's cost the Islanders. Let's add Nashville. Let's add at least 1 point. It's got to have cost the Islanders 16 points this season. 16. Rob Top probably has that a little bit more. And Gary's already told me I'm being too generous. 16. And again, that's me being at the floor. The ceiling, probably like 20 or 22. Ridiculous. And again, this is something we don't have an answer to this, and this is something I'm curious about. And this kind of goes into the retool. And I briefly touched on it. Are the Islanders trying to get a process down defensively for the younger kids to get it all together? I brought up Noah Dobson as an example. They kept the coaching staff over the season, and now with the maturation of Noah Dobson, we now have a power play. I'm wondering during this final 4 or 5 months of a retool, it goes along with the coaching. Are they trying to figure out a defensive scheme to help out players like Wallstrom, even Gautier, and Simon Holmstrom to improve the penalty kill? Are we just waiting for Clutterbuck and Martin to not be on this team? Are we just going through the process here? That's a question. Because the defensive scheme is not my favorite. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure it's not a favorite for you guys, but the players are literally shooting themselves in the foot when they stupid penalties, and it's been happening since I don't know beginning of November. I hate talking about it because it's just redundant. But I don't know if the coaching staff is going to get one more year. I don't know. Lou was patient with them, and it worked off with the power play. Instead of a defensively tight team, we now have a Western Hockey League type of team where it's more poke checks and everything else than actual body contact, and that's why you're seeing so many tripping penalties. Uh, It honestly boggles my mind. But from a prospect standpoint, the Islanders have enough players and enough talent to replace the aging veterans as they slowly start to descend. You understand where I'm going? So, as the players, the older vets come down to descend, it'll make it easier for some of these younger kids to hit that mark, and then we see how far they can go. What's your definition of this? Is an open ended discussion. And again, you guys are more than welcome to your opinions, whatever. What do you want Lane to do in terms of accountability? Give me your definition of that. I'm genuinely curious. You want to make the vets accountable? Go for it. Let me know. You guys can type in whatever you want. You're certainly not going to get bullied by me. You know, that's not happening. I'm genuinely curious what you guys feel accountability should be. So whenever you guys want to write it down, go for it. Okay? Sitcom Palmer. Put Oliver Wallstrom in. And that goes back to what I had said before. Oh, excuse me. Let me take this water cooler. Okay. Is Wallstrom mentally and emotionally ready to take over that spot? Gary said it before, and a couple of other season ticket holders actually brought this up to me. When he's in warm ups, he just looks like he's going through the motions. Sitting Palmieri is one thing. Bringing in Wallstrom, who's really, really ready, is another. Is Wallstrom ready to take over? That's it. Um, Ryan, go deeper. What kind of adjustments do you want to see? I'm all for this. I'm all for this kind of hockey conversation. But granted, accountable. Suter. Yeah. Brent Sutter. Listen, that's the. Uh, I don't know if the Sutters are ever going to get hired again. I don't know if that time is over. That's bothering me. Don't get me wrong. That's bothering me. Um, what are the expectations? The players will tell you. They'll be flat out honest. They're not worried about the Stanley Cup right now. They're not. At the same token, double-edged sword here. You need to show up for your hockey games, and they've done that twice in recent times where they haven't shown up. But they're not worried about standing. They're not worried about the Stanley Cup right now. They're not. If they make it to the playoffs, it's a different story. That's the mindset. Absolutely. Yeah, they're missing that discipline. But again, I'm not defending Ling Lambert. He's in this mess too. But the Islanders veterans have been around here long enough. Even some of the younger players, they've been around long enough where they should know discipline. Some of them grew up with Capuano, Thompson. They evolve with Trotz. Since when do they start giving up penalties like this all the time? Okay. Yeah, Sutters are ranching, no doubt. Yeah. And again, I don't know if Doug Huda is changing stuff up for the players. I don't know if this is a system that's going to take a little while. I don't know. It's different from last year. That's the thing. It's different from last year. And yes, Sorokin was a big deal on that. But I don't know if Lou is giving the players enough time to get the system down, or if we're just seeing so many mental mistakes that it's something has to be done. I love these questions. I love these conversations. Love to do it more often. But yeah, when are we going to see the when are we going to see the accountability? It's on the players. In all honesty, it's on the players. Will it cost Lane Lambert his job? It might. You want to rebuild? Did you just come onto the show? Rebuild's not the way to go, bud. Yeah. In this day and age, rebuilds are not the way to go. If you honestly want to rebuild, you will turn into the Ottawa Senators, you will turn into the Buffalo Sabres, you will turn into the Anaheim Ducks. There's no guarantee of success anymore with rebuilds. And I've been covering the draft now for 15 years. Some of those teams never get out of that rut. It's not about the Stanley Cup anymore. Billionaires are worried about making money, which means playoffs. Just got to get into the playoffs. Ottawa can't do that. Buffalo's not doing that. New Jersey's done it once in 7 years. Rebuilds are not the way to go. Look at Calgary. Calgary's not doing a rebuild. They want to do a retool. They've seen it. It's less time, and they stay competitive. Absolutely. Oh, no doubt. Veterans making rookie mistakes. Absolutely. Why? 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 It is. It is. It's a cardinal sin. Lane should not even have to preach that. He shouldn't. He shouldn't. But here we are. The Islanders are on pace for 89 points. If or when they beat Chicago, which they better, they're back on 91. Again, this is the lowest point percentage they've had all season. Carolina and Philly are on pace for 101. They've never been higher. I take that back. I think Philly's been around 104, 105. The Canes have not been any higher. I agree. I agree. And this is what I'm talking about as far as the evolution goes. We haven't seen the best of Simon Holmstrom yet. Gary and I said that with Dobson for like the last 3 years. You haven't seen the best of Simon Holmstrom. What I'm curious about is the ceiling that the Islanders have for Simon Holmstrom. Do they feel he's a second line left wing? That's going to be the interesting part. Maybe they move Enval down to the third line next season. We'll see. Maybe the penalty killing improves with Cal Clutterbuck not there. Maybe the penalty killing improves with the evolution and growth of Simon Holmstrom. Julian Gauthier full time maybe helps the penalty kill. You see where I'm going with this? Maybe it's just part of the transition from the older group that's eventually leaving over the next year or two to the younger kids. Maybe it's just addition by subtraction. It's we don't know. I don't blame Mayfield for that play in Nashville, and I'll say I will say this why. If Mayfield's stick does not break, that puck goes flying up and over. That doesn't hit the net. That doesn't even come close to the goal. I don't think that was a bad move by Mayfield. Sorokin was in good position. That was literally bad luck. That's not on Mayfield. What I don't like Mayfield doing, what I don't like Dobson doing, and I've seen it with Pellick as well, it's screening your goaltender. Dobson's been known to do that lately. They got to get rid of that. You can see that Mayfield was moving over a little bit to his right so that way Sorokin can see the puck coming in. I get that. I, I'm with you on that. It's just too many times we've seen it with Mayfield. But granted, absolutely, they need to be in better position quicker. All right, I'm going to say this now. Insanity is a legal term. You will not be diagnosed in the psychology field as insane. Stop using that word. Unless you're a lawyer, stop using the word insanity to me. This has nothing to do anymore with winning the Stanley Cup, boys and girls. I hate to add salt to that wound. It is about making money. The Islanders, when they showed up at UBS Arena, were $115 million in debt. 115 because they didn't do a Nassau Coliseum rebuild. They were able to make up a good chunk of that money and still be competitive. They had to do a retool. If you do a rebuild now, you will lose everything that they just worked on. The NHL does not really worry about teams winning the Stanley Cup anymore. They're worried about making the money. Believe me, I hate saying that. I grew up. You win, you play to win the game. You're going to win a championship. It doesn't happen anymore. These pockets are way too big. If the NHL was worried about teams winning the Stanley Cup, you'd only be at 26 teams, maybe 28. It's not. It's a real estate. It's all about real estate. It's about making the money here. Look at all the places now. The arenas. They're over $1 billion. Actually, Angie, believe it or not, Arizona, they were losing $30 million a year. They actually made $5 million at Mullet Arena. They made $5 million. They've made money at Mullet Arena over every other arena. Huck, I'm going to agree with you. Huck, I don't watch the NBA anymore. It's all entertainment. It's all offense. I don't play that game. I watch college sports. I actually watch women's basketball over the pros. I will watch NBA games in the playoffs. That's it. That's what we're at. Unfortunately, hockey is heading in that direction. I said this last week. This was part of my rant. The NHL is slowly turning into the adult version of the junior leagues. The NHL is slowly turning into the junior leagues. That's why I call the NHL. They have like a Western Hockey League game right now. They're doing the poke checks. Ryan, tell me if I'm wrong. Ryan's from Vancouver. I believe Vancouver, everybody. They're doing nothing but the poke checks. They're not using the body. They're doing more of a zoning and trap than they are actually, the physicality. They're losing the physicality. It's still there. But Ryan, tell me if I'm wrong. The Islanders are looking like a Western Hockey League team. The sport that we grew up with. Thank you. The sport that we grew up with. It's not there anymore, boys and girls. It's not there. It's sad to say that. Thanks for participating in the playoffs. Oh, we did our best. We'll try again next year. Ta-da. Where do you think we're at? That's why retools are the way to go. Rebuilds, absolutely not. Think about it. Look at where Ottawa has been. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. Who's watching that? Buffalo Sabres. Who's watching that? God love them. They're all diehards. They're all hoping. Look at what San Jose has to go through. Oh my God. Look at what San Jose has to go through. Anaheim's got some promise. But again, no, could be. Could be. Yeah. Imagine in Michigan. Billy Smith will have nothing of it. But again, you can't have Billy Smith teach Ilya Sorokin anything like that because the refs are just going to call tripping or slashing or whatnot. You can't play that game anymore. And it pains me to say that. I'm 47. I'm old. I can say that. It's a different game now. It is more of a finesse game. And I'll tell you right now, it's turning into the KHL. The quality is still better than the KHL, but I've seen enough games there. Yes, too many penalties are called. And why are too many penalties called? Because the teams go on the power play. What happens when most teams get on the power play? They start scoring more goals. This is what I've been trying to say before. Ilya Sorokin is not used to a system like this. He's not. He's never been in a system like this before. When he was in the KHL, it was very much of a Barry Trotz defensive first system until the playoffs. I am honestly, I will be completely upfront with you guys. If the NHL turns into an all offensive league, I won't watch it until the playoffs. That includes the Islanders. I need to see a little bit of defense. I don't need to see 2-1 games. I don't need to see 3-1 games. But the Islanders, I got to win 4-2, 5-3 every once in a while. Okay? I said this before, and I will grab the stat now in one moment. This is still staggering to me. The Islanders, when they give up 3 goals or less, 16-3-2. 16-3-2. When the Islanders give up 3 goals or less, they don't even have to give up 2 goals or less. You give up 3 goals or less. The New York Islanders, you're getting a point, and we're there. We're yeah, which is why the stupid penalties have been bothering everybody for months now. That's what gets me upset. If the Islanders had an iota of defense, we'd be first in the division. That's what bothers me. Yeah, he got away with it, no doubt. But that's where we're at, folks. Listen, the retool is working for now. Things happen, hockey happens, life happens. But what would you rather have? The Islanders competing for a playoff spot? Or do you want to be Ottawa? Do you want to be Buffalo? Do you want to be San Jose? Do you want to be Anaheim? Do you want to be Chicago? Do you want to be Columbus? Do you want to be Montreal? No, you don't. Absolutely not. And the way the Islanders have retooled the team, if we can see them draft this year, next year, the year after, and you put them all together with these college kids and some Europeans coming in together, for me personally, I'd get excited. There's more potential coming up. Again, it's only potential. And again, we don't know what Lou's going to do. Maybe he trades another first round pick. Devils lost. Beautiful. See, this is what I mean, folks. This is what I mean. The Devils We're on a 94-point pace that was about as high as they were going to go. That's been the highest. They haven't reached any higher. They've been struggling since then. You're in for a battle for the rest of the season. Sean and I said that 2 weeks ago. Grandma, plenty of it. Any other final questions, comments, concerns? If the Islanders can stay healthy, if they can just stop taking stupid penalties, I think we'd all be much more relieved. Let's be honest. They just have to show up literally for the next 60 games. Good Lord. If they just show up for another 20 games, 30 games, they're in. They are literally shooting themselves in the foot. Any more questions, comments, concerns? Anything other questions on the prospects if you have any? Manage the puck better. Yeah, that includes penalties. That includes penalties. Agreed, right? And no, I'm not new. Usually a Kool-Aid, blogger here, vlogger. Usually my Kool-Aid is spiked with something. But there's definitely frustration to this season. There's no doubt. They could be better. They should be better, but they're not. And it's just mind blowing that we just reached a point where it's like, why are we even talking about this? There's enough veterans on here. This shouldn't even be happening, but it is. And believe it or not, they actually did this. They did this in November as well. Let me show you. Let me show you this. In November, They only held four teams, 4 out of the 14 teams to 3 goals or less. They're on that pace right now. In the month of January, only two. They've only held two teams, or excuse me, three teams out of 8 to 3 goals or less. It's a little bit better than November, but November they only held them 4 teams out of 14. That's not good. That's not good. They got to get back. They got to get back to, let's see, October, 5 out of 8. January, not good. Even December was good. 9 out of 14 teams, a 65%. They do that, they're in. Granted, getting Varlamov back will certainly help. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on. This has been a real blast. I do love talking prospects and whatnot. You do have a future Islander fans with the prospects that you do have. Some of them are going to be good. Some of them are just going to be right where they need to be, and that's all you're looking for at the moment. Listen, don't forget to follow Isles Talk on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Please hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. It'll help us out immensely. Next week, I think Joe's going to come on. We'll talk Isles. We'll see how this next week comes around. Gary's at work, so we'll see what happens. And I'm still planning on trying to rack up a few guests here. So we'll go from there. And we'll see you guys next week. Let's go Islanders. And have a great night.